Is that named after you, Catherine?
I guess so. It just so happened. Yeah. But we all know like what podcat means. It's just like people who really love listening to podcasts. So, and yeah, Steve was the one that came out with this name.
Yeah.
And ever since then, people started calling me like podcat, which, well, I am Cat. Like, people don't really call me Catherine. They only call me Cat. So now it's just podcat.
So
I'm
now
fine
you're
with that.
PodCat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. We were like at some financial conferences, and then people are calling, "Hey, PodCat," and
Oh.
Wow.
All right.
Oh, thanks.
So guests are streaming in. We're at the pre-show part. We haven't we're not officially started yet. But
Right.
again, yeah. Thanks so much, Azran, Pearly, for doing this, and we are just so glad to have you on the podcast. Yeah. We can go ahead and set up the watch parties and anything. Yeah, for those coming in, yeah, feel free to say hi. Tell us where you came from, whether from Naluri or from the personal finances community or the entrepreneurs community as well. Yeah, I think also shout out there as well. Yeah.
So I don't get to see any chat messages.
I think. Do you want to see the chat messages?
I'll talk to you. I don't know. Curious.
I've actually turned it off, in case it gets distracting. But if anyone actually types any chat messages, we will let it actually pop up actually. So,
Just in case there are any fans who just want to say hi.
Oh, so you can
Azran
display
fans.
you can display it on the screen.
Yes.
And Facebook or YouTube, is it?
Yeah, from either Facebook or YouTube, so it will actually pop up. Yeah.
I'm off because I realized that my face is there and the office is super messy.
Okay. This is really behind the scenes. Okay. So so it will actually just pop up like this. So this is someone who gave a comment. Yes. Yeah. Just said hi.
Cool.
So any other comments will go on as well. We have about 3 minutes, so yeah, we can go ahead and share the watch parties. I assume someone is doing that for your side, Azran.
Pearly?
Probably.
Really? Okay, let me do that too.
I do not know how to do a watch party. Okay, share. Start a watch party. Okay.
Yep, that's right. You got it.
Okay. Let me also tag Sophia and see whether we
assume someone is doing it. That's right. You got it. There's a little bit of a delay from when we talk and when it appears. So yeah, we might need to mute from our devices.
Okay. Mute.
Yeah, just like that.
Okay. Oh, it's from your phone, is it? Okay.
It's from mine too, right? Okay.
Yeah. I've muted mine already. Actually, yeah. Okay, so we got a couple of minutes. Yeah. Do you have dinner together with your team there, Azran?
No, they decline. They have their own private plans.
That's
They don't want to
mean.
eat with me.
Really, that's mean.
So we did do lunches, right? Like you join us nowadays to do lunch together with the team. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm the one having issues clicking the button for the watch party. All right, 1 minute countdown. All right, let's have a excellent chat on podcast this evening. I'm going to drop myself from the chat, and we're just going to get started here.
All right.
All right.
Hi everyone, welcome to my personal finances podcast episode 33. I hope everyone had a great dinner. And today we're going to talk about mental, physical, and financial wellness. And it's a great honor to have Azran to be on the show today. Azran is the CEO of Nulluri. Other than that, he's also a business builder, investor, and speaker, and also author. And let's welcome Azran to be on the show.
Hi, Kat. Thank you for having me.
Hi Azran, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. Even though I've already done some brief introduction, like for the benefit of everyone, could you mind to like briefly introduce yourself?
Wow. Okay. Well, if there's one thing to describe the last 25 years of my professional career, it's been number one across multiple industries, from heavily regulated, capital-intensive industries like an airline, fast-moving technology space, and of course now in healthcare and digital health. I've made a lot of mistakes in that process. That's how I lose all my hair. But what keeps me going is to do things very differently than how it's always been done.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's go straight to Naluri then. Like, could you please
Sure.
tell us what's Naluri and how it helps people, especially for mental, physical, and financial wellness, which is exactly our topic today.
Okay, well, Naluri is a digital health application, which we launched in 2018. To set the context, there are three big problems that we see in healthcare that we wanted to try to help solve. The first, the traditional way of healthcare, which is consultation, whether you go see someone for advice, a consultation one-on-one, or even now with telemedicine, where you log in like we're having a conversation right now. The problem with that is a lot of real health conditions, whether it's chronic conditions like diabetes and heart diseases or cancer, or mental health with depression, anxiety, and stress, or transforming your personal finances, these can't be solved with a single consultation. You need a structured program over multiple months, i.e., right, to really make lasting change. And so we've got to rethink that model of just one-on-one consultation to a more programmatic approach. That's one. The second part, with a lot of traditional healthcare solutions or services, it's actually more activity oriented rather than outcomes or results oriented. And we wanted to be able to set the standard for quantifiable, clinically significant outcomes, right? So that means when people enroll in our program, we try to measure quantitatively their levels of mental health. We measure quantitatively their physical health, like weight and blood pressure and blood sugar and cholesterol. And over, say, a 4-month period, we want to measure that the end result. And so you can quantify the improvements made over a period of time. So we really want to bring results orientation to healthcare. And the third is healthcare has always been siloed, right? You see specialists. If you go see a cardiologist, he or she's only going to talk to you about your heart. If you see a gastroenterologist, it's just about your gut. If you see a psychologist, it's about your mind and emotions. If you see a dietitian, it's about your food. But health is actually very interrelated, and it requires a more holistic approach to tackling it, right? And so what Nulluri does is it says, not one person can help you. You need a whole team to support you, right? Your own psychologist, your own dietitian, your own doctors, your own fitness coaches. And we also realize that if you, for example, wanted to lose weight or get healthier, you might be eating very well. You might be exercising frequently. And guess what? Your weight may still go up because you may be under a lot of stress, right? Now, psychologists can help that to an extent, but at the same time, the two main root causes of stress are workplace stress and financial stress. And so we need experts in those two areas so that our users can get real tangible advice that can be actioned. And so we added executive coaches and financial planners to our coordinated team of coaches, so that the way we coach as a team, right, can deliver a more comprehensive program and support for our users and our clients. So those are the three things that we wanted to try to solve with Nulluri.
That's very interesting. So we know that like Naluri is all about getting healthier one small step at a time, especially with personalized and multidisciplinary and professional coaching. So what are the benefits of having different modules and checkpoints for these three aspects, like whether it's mental, physical, and financial wellness?
Well, so remember the first thing I said, that you go through a journey to change, right? And that change is not linear. It's not like, I want to get healthier, I want to be more financially stronger, and somehow it grows linearly. That unfortunately is not the case. There are ups and downs, right? You start, you're feeling motivated, then you're going to hit roadblocks and obstacles, and then you're going to drop, and then you need someone to pick you back up and get you back on track again, right? And so that journey therefore means there are different points where I need more intensive coaching and attention. And there are different points when I'm on the roll, I can do things on my own, and I can build self-confidence. That is why the coaching is not just about our human professionals kind of just talking to you. There are a lot of self-help tools that are part of that journey, right? Whether they're education modules, there are assessment modules, learning different techniques, and journaling. Journaling is a big part of personal improvement, right? Whether it's my food journal or my thought journal, right? Journaling allows us to look for patterns over time. And so when we equip or enhance the coaching with these digital tools and modules, we create opportunities for our clients to be able to build self-confidence and self-reliance, because we don't want everybody to use Nulluri forever. Ideally, our goal is within, say, 4 to 6 months, you are well on your way to achieving your healthiest and best self by yourself.
Like get back on track, and that's
absolutely. That's right. Yes.
And all this like a personal journey, they are customized, right? So you did mention that the like Naluri's coaches actually customize for each individual's personal journey. Yep. So what is taken into consideration when you are customizing this personal journey for each?
Okay.
Clients?
So one of the first things we start with is, why are you here? Different people have different objectives, right? It may be, look, my doctor says I'm overweight and I've got high blood pressure and my blood sugar is at diabetes levels. Or I'm really overwhelmed with stress, I'm not able to sleep, and I really can't cope with the pressures that I'm under, right? Or I'm okay, but I've hit a rut, I'm plateauing, I'm not able to achieve a higher level of performance, right? Whatever those goals are, that's a starting point. You need to understand people have different goals. The next part is, whatever your goals are, all of us have different motivations. And what we focus on at Nulluri is your intrinsic motivation versus your extrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation is when you do something for someone else or for some other external measure. Whether it's like, well, my doctor told me I need to bring down my blood pressure, so I need to do something about that, right? Or my boss expects me to do this. Or I need to achieve 10,000 steps on my Fitbit, right? These are external metrics. External metrics, unfortunately, don't really last. You know, after a week, a month, they're not the main reason why we stick and can become self-sustaining. But if we can define our own intrinsic motivations that relate to our identity and our values. For example, for some of our users, when we talk to them, they realize what's really important to them is their role as a parent to support for their children, right? And so health, for example, is not about, I need to lose 5 kilos by 4 months' time, but I really want to have energy to come home every day, to be able to play with my kids, right? And to not snap and just get upset at everybody. That is an intrinsic motivation. Or it may be, I need to take care of my aging parents because I'm the only caregiver. And if I'm not healthy, whether it's physical health, emotional health, or financial health, how am I going to take care of these people? And once you discover your intrinsic motivation, it becomes it generates energy in you. And it's what our coaches used to tap into whenever you're going to hit that inevitable roadblock or setback, to really feel, okay, I need to come back to your the motivation and the goal to be able to carry on.
Based on your sharing, like it looks like it's a great start when someone has like found their intrinsic motivation, found their like personal goal. But what if someone comes to you and say that I'm not sure what my goal is? Like
exactly. So and that is the coaching or therapy process, right? By our coaches are professionals who are trained to ask questions that make you reflect, right? Like what brings you joy, right? What are the things that you do in your life that you feel, I really enjoy doing that? What are the things in your life that you dread, that sap energy from you, right? What do you look forward to at the start of the day, and what do you dread at the start of the day? And various points allow the coaches to triangulate and help you guide towards discovering your own intrinsic motivations.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like a lot of us like would have this sort of problem, like they wonder what is the purpose of life. I'm pretty sure that is one of the most common questions that you get
Exactly.
asked, right?
Absolutely.
So it's actually by
yeah,
asking questions that you
correct,
will
right?
help them.
For example, when we think about purpose in life, right? It's not, you have to think about it across three different areas. The first is, in a way, it does lead, it's about our vocation, our work, right? How do we, what do we do that creates value to others, right? What would people pay us to do? Because some people might say, I'm really passionate about stamp collecting, but not a lot of people are going to pay you to collect stamps or coins, right? So what is it that you can do that people value, and a test of that is they're willing to pay you for that? The second part is, of course, your passions. What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money at all, right? And let's understand why you chose those things. And the third is, what are big issues that the world faces today that you care deeply about, that you read a lot about, that you talk to a lot of people? And through a number of conversations, we can start to find that intersection between those three. And that's really where you can find a really deep and meaningful purpose. Because not only is it something that you're passionate about, something that you care deeply about, as well as a big problem that the world is facing, right? And third, people see you are the right person to deal with it because they recognize that, you know, and you have certain skills or experience that they're willing to pay you for.
So when it comes to these three aspects, like are they, how are these three like interrelated? Like are they always in a sequential? Like do people always find the occasional work, and like as you mentioned, like are people willing to pay them to do this, and then it comes to the passion, and then to contribution to the society?
So, yeah, not necessarily, because people go through different phases in their journey. Now, let me also throw an interesting viewpoint, which is, you know, the old way of planning our life was that our first 20 years we study. Then we get a job, and then we're gonna, you know, work for maybe 30, 40 years, depending on how well, you know, we manage our finances. Then we're supposed to retire, right? Like this linear, sequential 3 phases. However, a number of things suggest that the 21st century is no longer about that. Life will not happen that way anymore. Number one, our lifespans are going to increase, right? For those of us who were born after the year 2000, you know, the Gen Zs now, not even the millennials, the average lifespan is going to be past 100, right? Now, in that case, if you think, if I have to live until 100, basically the traditional financial planning model of just saving, and then what, after 50, 60, I'm going to have enough to retire, that's not going to work anymore, right? And also, the idea of having one career is obsolete, because technology is changing so rapidly, consumer models are changing so rapidly. Whatever we study in university today, the one thing we can be assured of is by the time you graduate, it's going to be obsolete. That's not to say university is not relevant. The art of learning is relevant, but you're going to have to keep learning new things throughout your career. So the idea of having multiple careers become very key. The other thing about having multiple income streams become very key, right? Because we have to kind of last longer and adapt to all the different parts. And there are going to be different phases in our lives where certain phases we're going to be like accumulating wealth and growing. And other phases we're going to go back to relearning and rebuilding ourselves, our identity, and learning new skills and enhancing our networks. So life is going to be more like an up and down wave rather than just a steady state, three-phase career. And that can be very disruptive to people who don't anticipate it, right? And that can cause a lot of stress. It can cause a lot of anxiety, because the old way of like, I like it when things are predictable and reliable and stable. We thrive, we crave that. But unfortunately, the world we live in right now, we have no idea what's going to happen in 2021, let alone 5 years from now. In January, would any of us have known we would be in this situation? No, right? And guess what? Going forward, these disruptions are going to happen more and more amplified and more frequent.
Yeah, I believe our education system plays a part as well, and also like the way we see things and the whole like learning, like throughout our whole life. I'm pretty sure like there are a lot of people who like they are being taught this way in the education system, and when it comes out to the society, it's a totally different world. And they like as just mentioned, it's absolutely disruptive. Like they were not prepared for that, and they are back to like ground zero where they have to learn everything, change a mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. Yeah. So is there a noticeable trend or relation between users who follow Nalluri's modules and checkpoints, and in that way achieve their wellness goals?
Sure.
Or whatever goals.
I think generally we're excited because about 60% of the people who complete our Nulluri program achieve what we call a clinically significant health improvement, right? So for example, not just weight loss, but at least a 5% weight loss, because at that level, you'll reduce your diabetes and heart disease risks by between 30 to 50%, right? So not just any kind of blood pressure reduction, but at least a 10-point reduction. And same thing with the amounts of depression, anxiety, and stress that's reduced, not just by a little bit, by something that's significant, and sometimes even reducing or eliminating the need for medication, which is an important goal that we strive to do. So what's, that on one hand, you might think, well, is that good or bad? But another benchmark is, number one, people who try to do things on their own by themselves, only about 24-25% of people succeed by themselves, right? Because a lot of people have all the good intentions. You know how we set New Year's resolution in January? Well, by February, most people have stopped their New Year's resolution. So it's only 1 in 4 kind of actually follows through and succeeds on their own. But what science shows is if you have a whole coaching team to support you that provides that accountability and the problem-solving support, the checking in on you, your likelihood of success comes closer to 60%. And interestingly, on the physical health side, right, we've got a lot of friends and relatives, I'm sure, who have these conditions like diabetes and heart diseases, and doctors prescribe medication, right? But here's the thing about medication. Number one, it only works about 50 to 60% of the time. And two, it actually doesn't solve or cure your medical condition. It only tempers the symptoms. So it doesn't cure your diabetes, but it just controls your blood sugar. And a lot of people, and they end up needing higher dosage over time because your body becomes more used to that medication, right? And so imagine if we could improve people's health lives, similar levels to medication, without any side effects, without the need for medication, right? Then we can create, real breakthroughs to really help people become healthier. And the moment they become physically healthier, they become mentally healthier. They become mentally fitter and more resilient. And of course, naturally, then they become more attuned to an action mode, which then helps to improve their financial health and well-being as well.
Yeah. So as we know that, like for example, if it's a physical wellness, we know that we can measure your different readings to show that you are physically healthy. And for financial health, we can definitely have the the checking or financial ratios, or some ratios that just to show that this person is financially well. But what about mental wellness?
Yeah. So that's what we do, right? We quantify it. There are a number of standard international tools that quantifies level of depression, anxiety, and stress through various, for example, 21 question surveys. But on top of that, professional psychologists, when they have conversations with you, they're actually assessing you, right? They're kind of calibrating your answers along kind of a spectrum of the intensity. Now, what I want to bring up here, though, is people think of mental health as just like an illness or weakness. That's a bit like thinking of physical health as only diabetes and heart disease. But we understand positive physical health, right? We understand when someone has a lot of stamina and endurance, someone who can run very fast, someone who can lift big heavy weights and become very flexible like a gymnast. But similarly with mental health, there's also mental fitness, right? It includes things like resilience, our ability to bounce back when we hit setbacks and obstacles, our ability to focus, our ability to look at things optimistically, our ability to look at things more curiously and not just come to quick judgments based on our past experiences, and our ability to connect with other people. These are very strong, positive mental fitness attributes. And each of them have the equivalent of going to a gym. If you want to get healthy, right? Now, I can assure you, you can watch all the videos about being healthy. You're not going to get healthy watching a video, right? Now, if you go to a gym by yourself, chances are you're not going to get healthy after the first day because you don't know what to do. After the first day, you're going to be so sore and tired. You're like, oh, that's not for me, right? But if you actually had a physical trainer who's trained to assess you and understand you and guide you through that process, you're more likely to succeed, right? There are a number of workouts, right? There are also a number of mental workouts that they're able to build those mental muscles to teach us to become more resilient and curious and focused and optimistic. But likewise, you can do it by yourself, very hard, or you can have a trained coach to kind of guide you and help you build these skills in yourself, right? And this is what our team of psychologists focus on, is to address it early enough so that we can think about it as positive mental fitness rather than just, oh, it's a weakness that I need to kind of, address.
Or put it in a way that we shouldn't look at this as we have a problem. It's not like
That's
we're
right.
having a mental problem or any like mental illness. It's just that we should put it in a way that it's just like we go to gym for like our fitness. Now we have to go to a mental wellness center to keep us fit mentally.
Now think about it this way: world champions, right? What's the difference between, say, Lewis Hamilton and if he finishes a race number 1 versus the guy who finishes number 2, or Usain Bolt when he completes a world record breaking 100-meter sprint versus the guys? It's just a few seconds, right? And they probably have a lot of the same nutrition support, physical training. But the difference oftentimes between the winners and number 2 is the mental strength, the ability to channel that pressure of having 100,000 people in the stadium, 100 million people watching you on a live telecast, and channeling that into energy. As opposed to, a lot of people, if you're not trained, when you face pressure, you crumble, right? And that is not something that you're born or you're innate with. You actually go through training on how do I turn that stress into positive energy.
Right. So it's like, is this exactly what Naluri is doing? Like giving this sort of a mental training?
Exactly, right? Because of course, the more we can help people at an early stage, because if we can quantify early symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression, it's a lot easier to treat that than when it becomes a real chronic medical condition. Just like, when you're slightly overweight, we can detect that and help you. It's going to be a lot easier than when you're already advanced level of diabetes, where not only do you have to take drugs, but you have to take insulin injections, or when your kidneys have failed and you need dialysis. It's a lot harder to fix, right? So why wait until you have, real big health problems before you get help? And I'm sure your listeners will be familiar, right, with the adage, don't wait until you're like 100,000 ringgit in debt before you get help, right? The best time to get help is when you're starting fresh and you've got no debt, so that you can plan and start off on the right footing.
Yep, that's what they always say. Don't sit on your problems. Like if you just feel like something is not right, just sit on it. Don't sit on it, and just talk to someone. Talk to someone
right.
professionals. Yeah, get some proper guidance.
That's right.
Right. That's very interesting. So, what's your favorite success story of a Naluri user who has managed mental or physical or financial wellness growth, or in all aspects?
Wow, it's hard for me to choose
It
favorites.
must
Like,
be.
asking a parent, which one's your favorite child?
I
But
know.
we've
You can
had,
name a few.
well, so I'm not going to name names, right? But for example, we had, with some of our clients who are in industrial industries, right? Heavy machinery, where you have to take a physical exam, and if you fail your physical exam, you cannot work on the plant because you pose a risk, right? And so if you can't work, number one, you can imagine that that's a big financial setback, right? And it also relates to their identity as a person. And so when people are told you fail your medical exam and you can't work, that's a big blow to them. And in some of these cases, we've had someone lose 21 kilos in 4 months, to drop his blood sugar by 2 percentage points of the HbA1c, which is very, very significant, right? And to kind of become much more mentally resilient from that process. Like if I showed you their before and after picture, it's like a completely different person, right? And there are a number of similar situations. But at the same time also, for example, there's a 32-year-old woman who, it's like in an everyday Malaysian working in a white collar professional role, where through our chat, one of the things we do is we try to quantify your state of emotion just based on the words that you type and the things that you do in our modules. And so we can gauge whether you're kind of like a average level of emotional intensity, or a big positive means like you're highly ecstatic, to big negative meaning you're deep depression. And by tracking from that conversation, suddenly we saw her score drop to negative 0.8 very suddenly. And that triggered an alert, and our psychologist reached out to her and asked her, and said, let's talk. What's going on in your life right now? And she said, I'm glad you reached out. My husband's traveling a lot. I've got to take care of the kids by myself. The kids are sick. I'm under a lot of pressure at work. It's performance appraisal season. I can't control everything. I was thinking of ending my life. So she had expressed real suicide ideation. Now, suicide is real. By the way, in Malaysia and around the world, more people die from suicide than all of wars, murders, and terrorism combined. So we are killing ourselves much more than people are killing us. So it's a real problem. And most of the time, people are not reaching out, right? So traditional services that say, here's a helpline, call the helpline. Well, what we see is, for example, in an organization, barely 2 to 4% of people actually pick up the phone. Yet we know from our populations that between 30 to 50% have elevated levels of stress, anxiety, depression. So there's a big disconnect. And so what we try to do at Nulluri is, by closely monitoring them and looking at them more holistically, right? Their physical health, their mental health, their financial well-being, and developing quantitative scores, we can detect when people are going on a dip and therefore intervene at that right point. And because we've built a relationship with her over the last couple of months, talking about food, talking about exercise, she was more receptive when a familiar person reached out to her. right? And this is why I think it's a breakthrough in the way we provide support for mental health. We don't wait until someone is at the brink of collapse and then expect them to reach out for help. That's not going to work, right? Similarly, as you can imagine, right, if someone's on the brink of financial bankruptcy, do you think at that time they're going to say, I think I need a financial planner? Not likely, right? Even though they probably need one at that time really desperately, but they don't, because it's just too overwhelming already. So the more we can get better at predicting it early on, and I'm sure we're by no means perfect, but we're 2 years in, and maybe by 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, we have more data points. Our algorithms can detect these patterns with higher degrees of precision. We're going to get better. We're going to learn and get better at predicting it early and intervening at the right point.
That's such a great thing that Naluri is doing, because I'm pretty sure there's no psychologist or any counselor that would actually know when exactly, or they would never actually reach out to a patient to ask if they are okay. It's always the other way around. But just
That's
as you
right.
mentioned, if only a person knows that they have a problem, they reach out. That's a good thing. But most of the time, when they're so deeply in the problem, they don't know what to do. They are paralyzed by whatever is in front of them. So
That's right.
It's amazing. Right. So this is your favorite story, I would say?
Well, no, I mean, again, there are many. There are many. I just
I'm pretty sure you have many
different
to share.
anecdotes, right? Yeah. So the good news with that, by the way, is we started supporting her much closer over the subsequent 2 or 3 months, literally calling her every single week, some video conferences, and her score started to normalize after 2 or 3 months. So I think it does goes to show that if the right level of structured programmatic support can be much more effective than just a one-off therapy session or consultation session.
Yep, it definitely proven the point.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what is the one big audacious habit or goal that you want our audience to take action, whether it's to be mentally or physically or financially well?
Well, philosophically, for me, I stay away a little bit from the big, hairy, audacious goals, because sometimes it can scare us to not act, because it seems so far-fetched. I don't take the first steps, right? And I guess for me, if I were to draw on a personal story, it's a bit like a long time ago when I turned 40 years old, right? Someone said, hey, you should try the sport called triathlon. The problem is, for 40 years of my life, I had never learned how to swim, right? Now, triathlon involves swimming in the deep sea for 3.8 kilometers for an Ironman triathlon, for example, right? And so that the very thought of it would be oh, impossible. I can't even swim in a pool, and you expect me to go into the sea for a few kilometers? Most people, you get to that stage, it seems so impossible you don't start. But if we can break it down into something as simple as, well, what does being able to swim mean to you? Well, a lot of things, right? And so what would it take to get started? And so for me, it was, okay, let me have my very first swimming lesson, which was with me, the 40-year-old Azran, a long time ago, with 5-year-old kids in someone's backyard pool, right? Lesson number 1 was just put head in water, blow bubbles. I think I got that part, right? And lesson number 2 the next day was the teacher would throw coins in the pool, and you try to go down and pick up the coins. And the pool is just, the water is just waist deep, right? I wasn't the best in my class. But, my point is, when we can break it down into actionable steps that are, I think I can do that, right? That builds the confidence. Once we've got confidence, we've got momentum. Once we've got momentum, we can keep going further and further and further apart. So that's why I'm much more passionate about those first steps rather than the big goals.
Wow, it's way more meaningful than the big goal that we always ask our guests. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of different, Kat.
No, but that is very very useful. Like I think like there are so many times like we have like interviews or video podcasts, or they have so many YouTubers talking about you should achieve big, you should like be someone, do something useful. No, but sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Right.
But
And,
yes.
and another parallel question to that, right? When someone says, find your passion.
Mhm.
Well, the problem with that, right? It's like, well, I don't know what my passion is, right? Instead, what I believe in, right? If we come back to the earlier framework we talked about is, find that purpose in what you're doing today, right? And then do more of that part of what your job. Now, the reality is all of our jobs, they're things that are mundane and boring, but they're probably parts that really connect to our personal values, right? And we need to find ways to do more of that part and then network and build relationships, seek mentoring to keep having more opportunities to do more of that. So you have a starting point that you can go. But if you tell someone, find your passion, well, then I'm kind of just waiting. I don't know what to do. What does find my passion mean? Like go to a supermarket? Which aisle do I go to look for my passion? It doesn't work that way. So you end up actually not doing anything and just kind of waiting somehow for the passion to hit you. But that's not how life works, right? Instead, if we look for what is passionate in the work that we do, we start to see things that we otherwise easily overlook in the stuff that we're already in our hands, right? That's why the small things in front of us are hugely important.
It kind of relates to like being mindful, right, to everything that
Mm-hmm.
we do, because like we see so many people that like just like you mentioned, like a regular office job, white collar, they go to work every day, travel to work, and now they just work from home every day. They're just doing all this everyday thing. It comes so mundane and become like robot. So it comes to a point where people don't feel anymore. They It will be definitely difficult for, like you mentioned, like to feel like what they like in part and parcel of the job.
Well, actually, they may be feeling a lot of things, but they're feeling a lot of things that's not related to what they do. So for example, right, did you know that a normal person spends 47% of their waking hours mind wandering, thinking about something else other than the task in front of them? Cat?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all right. So what happens is, because it becomes so mundane and routine as you described, you allow your mind to wander. And oftentimes it's wandering in one of two directions or both. Wandering to the past, right? Things somehow that happen in the past and we kind of like, it keeps playing back. And actually oftentimes it's more often the bad things. Sometimes even as far as childhood traumatic things keep playing in our heads over and over again. And sometimes it's the anxiety of the future. We start to just kind of make up scenarios. So there's a big difference between stress and anxiety. Stress is when there's an immediate threat that we're facing, right?
Mhm.
Now, from our ancestors, that's probably a predator, saber-toothed tiger running after us. But today's equivalent of that saber-toothed tiger is our boss is upset at us, our clients are, unhappy, we're missing our sales targets, we got a lot of bills to pay by the end of the month. Those create stress because that's immediate. But humans, we've evolved to something called anxiety, where those stress triggers have not happened yet, but we're already anticipating in the future, and the body is already experiencing the stress before those stress triggers happen, right? And so these thoughts keep flying in our heads, the depressing thoughts of the past and the anxious thoughts of the future. And it takes away from that focus on what we're doing in the present, right? And that's why we feel disconnected with our work, because we allow the brain to kind of just roam in a very kind of haphazard, unstructured way. So one of the key skills of building mental resilience is to learn how to focus, right? And for example, one of the things that a lot of people should do, but I guarantee you they're not going to do it just because I say so, because it's their habits are so ingrained, is this idea of multitasking, right? Multitasking is when you're listening to this webinar or this podcast with Azran and Kat, but at the same time you're checking your phone and you got the TV playing and you're trying to do a few things at once. that actually creates, when you're trying to do multiple things, you're teaching your brain to wander. You're creating more susceptibility for the brain to wander, right? Instead, what we really need to learn is, how do I train the brain to focus on one thing at a time, right? If I'm going to have dinner with my family, I need to have dinner with my family, not using the phone and have the TV on. If I'm running, right, I need to run and be present and feel kind of the oxygen coming in and know my stride, instead of just like trying to do multiple things at once, right? And that's why, some people talk about, deep breathing exercises and all that, but the whole point is to just do one thing at a time. Now, all of our jobs, we've got multiple responsibilities and all of that. But what we need to learn is to compartmentalize, right? For example, first 25 minutes, I'm going to put away my browser, my email. I'm just focusing on writing this report. After that, okay, I'm going to check emails for 5 minutes. After that, I'm going to do this. By doing things one at a time, we train our mind to focus. And like going to the gym, the first time it's going to be awkward, but over time you get better at it and better at it, because that repetition will create those mental muscles.
Wow. I guess like we all miss out the point. Like we always think like we should be multitasking, we should do more things, you should be more productive by, just try to do more and more things every day. But we miss out the point that we should actually just focus on one thing at a time. And as you mentioned,
Right.
like start from small little steps.
Right. So for example, right, our brain is only 2% of the entire weight of our body, but it consumes 20% of our calories, 20% of our energies. So it's very energy intensive. So thoughts are extremely draining, right? So simply thinking a lot causes us to be fatigued, right? So for example, right, like I do an Ironman race, and in a single Ironman triathlon of swimming, cycling, running, in one day, I burn 6,000 calories. That's a lot of plates of nasi lemak, right?
Yes,
Here's
among
the interesting point. A world champion chess grandmaster competing in a world chess championship burned 6,000 calories from thinking, from thinking 50 moves ahead, multiple permutations. When you think and think and think, you can imagine how much energy that takes. And every time you switch a task, the brain uses more energy. So if you do 3 seconds of one WhatsApp message, and then you shift to the email, and then you shift to this Microsoft Word document, it uses a lot more energy. It's heavily energy efficient. It's like driving a car. If you drive a car, Cat, and you brake, and then you accelerate, brake, and accelerate, brake, and accelerate, try that. Guess what? Your fuel consumption is going to be horrible, right? Versus driving at a steady pace.
yeah.
Same concept.
Wow, very interesting concept. I guess like I guess most of us, like especially like people working in this city, like stressful life, busy life, we all have the same problem. We tend to overthink. We tend to try to do too many things at one time. We try to be this, we try to be that.
Yeah.
When we hear people saying that, we should you should work out more, you should like you should lose more weights. There are just too many distraction and too many things that, as you mentioned, like these are even more like consuming too much of our brain power, instead of using that to focus on one thing at a time.
Right. But you think about it, right? I've got a startup that I'm building and I have to be responsible for. We've got now over 40 employees at Nulluri. I sit on a few boards of companies that I have to oversee. I've got other investments that I'm making. I still compete in triathlons. That means I got to train a lot, right? I've got a family. So a lot of things. But if you have a structured method, you can do a lot of things. But you don't try to do the 5, 6 big things in your life on that same 1 hour.
Does this structure plan comes in like a schedule way of working?
Well, in a way, yeah, right? I feel the most important app on my phone or on my laptop is Google Calendar. because anything that I need done, I block a specific time. Calendars are much more effective than to-do lists. Because the problem with the to-do list, I'm not setting a time when I do it, right? And why I like Google Calendar is because it's got a function where you can color things differently, right? So personal things, orange, right? Internal work matters, dark green. External meetings, light green, right? Other organizations I'm involved with, yellow or whatever. So on a week, I can see different colors. And then I can look at the past weeks and I can see, these last few weeks, right? My orange seems to be a lot little. Why, right? And so I can make tactical adjustments, right? And that's how we kind of recalibrate and reprioritize our time. But first we need to be able to see it, see how we're spending our time.
Yeah, I think time management, it can be a totally different topic that we can talk about for another 1 hour. I think personally for me, I think time management is so important, especially previously with this MCO, and everyone tries to do more things to try to manage the time, that try to not lose focus at their work. But times like this, I feel like when we have too much to-do list, it kind of makes us more stressful. But now that you mentioned that you should actually focus on calendar, planning your time instead of just listing out things that you do, I think it's even a better way.
Exactly. And sometimes something will happen and you need to do something else than the time that you schedule, but then you make a decision. Okay, I cannot, normally Friday 3 to 5, I'm trying to think about, something further in the future. But a big client meeting came up. But now I've got to find another time to do that. Right? So that means, I'm making that conscious choice instead of just it came up and then I never come back to that.
Very great sharing. Very good points. All right. So now it's the time for the random question game.
Oh, what is that? Tell me more.
Here it comes. So a random question game is we get a 10,000 combination of different questions. And now I get to read out the question and you have to choose one of these two. And not just that, you have to explain why do you choose that. So the question is, would you rather wish for financial freedom or a perfect work-life balance?
Perfect work-life balance.
Okay. And why is that so?
I say that because, different people obviously have different meanings that they attach to the term financial freedom, right? But in a way, for me, financial freedom kind of is a goal or a destination. And I'm not big on destinations myself. I enjoy the adventure of the journey. So I'm not, my life isn't about wanting to get to a specific state, but to be curious and explore the whole journey around that. Now, I'm also a believer that there isn't such a thing as a perfect work-life balance, but because it's not about, for example, trying to do everything the same, right? But it's as you go through different phases in your life, you need to prioritize different things, right? So there's certain times in our life where we have to be, for example, when you build a new startup from scratch that first year, right? You're working 16, 18 hours a day, and you have to sacrifice a lot to do that. But then you got to now figure out, okay, once I get over that pass, how do I, bring other elements in my life and focus on that instead? So that's kind of how I think about balance, rather than it's perfectly harmonious and somehow work and life and personal life is just nicely balanced. It's never that.
Interesting. Right. So here it comes, my turn.
Ooh, okay.
So this is the question that I'm supposed to answer. So who would you choose to have a 2.5-hour lunch with? Whether it's Tony Robbins or Elon Musk? Wow.
Is that for me to answer or for you to answer? You?
Well, it's this question is supposedly for me.
Okay, go for it.
So I would choose Tony Robbins, I believe.
Okay. Why?
Even though Elon Musk is definitely a legendary, he has achieved so many things, but I mean, the reason behind like I choose Tony Robbins would probably be like I feel like he would definitely be a very interesting person to talk to. He's so motivational, so inspiring, and he always has that like like high energy. That's what we all need, I believe. And not just that, I also do find out that we all see him as a very super high energy person, but behind this, like he has done a lot of work to prepare each of his seminar and each of the very minor thing that he does in life. So I think those are the things that we should learn from him, that we can learn
Cool.
from him.
Awesome.
Right. What about yourself? Like if you were to choose from these two?
Well, since you've chose Tony, I'm going to choose Elon because I want to really understand what he has in mind for how humans are going to colonize Mars.
Well, interesting too. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, so here it comes to the end of our session. Like,
Okay.
Azran, do you want to share about this sponsor code that we have with Nulluri?
Okay, well, because of our relationship, Naluri is an app that's downloadable on both the iOS App Store or Google Play. So anyone has access to it. But if you use this particular sponsor code, then you're going to have access to the whole team of coaches, to kind of have all those discussions about your intrinsic motivations and your purpose and helping you go through that. And if you feel that's going to be useful, the subsequent subscriptions are at a significant discount to our regular retail rate. So that would be a good financial saving.
Great. Thank you for this. All right. Thank you for your time. Thanks for all the
All right.
sharing. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me, Kat.
Thank you. So I really enjoy learning from Azran. I hope you guys have learned a thing or two from him as well. If I were to really summarize what I learned from him, or maybe just one key takeaway that I learned from him, would probably be try not to multitask and try to focus on one thing at a time and not to sit on your problems. Just take one step at a time and just work towards the goal that you want instead of like overthinking. So as usual, you can find the show notes and links on our website, mypf.my/podcast. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next week. Hasta pronto.